Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Getting Started webinar for Homeschool Tracker. My name is Dave, and I'm with Homeschool Tracker. And together with my wife, Amy, we own and operate Homeschool Tracker. And we just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. We know you have a lot of other things you could be doing on a Monday night, and so we're just so thankful that you've spent some time with us tonight to learn a little bit more about Homeschool Tracker and how it could work well for you in your homeschool. So just a little bit of background before we get started. It's really our goal here to create great products that will help you be more successful in your homeschool. And along with that, we also want to make sure that we give you the training and the support necessary to use those products so that you can be more successful. And that's really what webinars and training sessions like this are all about. They're about just educating you and getting you comfortable with the software, answering any questions you may have, and showing you real world examples of how you can use these tools to make your homeschool life more efficient and more successful. So again, just thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm just going to spend a minute just to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit about where to find help in Homeschool Tracker, because as you may have noticed, Homeschool Tracker is a very feature-rich application. There's a lot in it, and that also means that there's a lot to learn if you want to take advantage of all of those features. So I want to talk a little bit about where you can find help and how you can get support when necessary. We'll also take a little bit of time to go over the interface of Homeschool Tracker, talk about where everything is and what you can expect. We're going to spend some time talking about the difference between subjects and courses. We'll spend time talking about assignments, which are really the heart of all your record keeping in Homeschool Tracker. We'll go over the basics of lesson plans, which can be a really efficient way for you to plan and schedule your agenda in your homeschool. We'll talk about reports. And then we'll discuss workflows. And what we mean by workflows is really how you basically use all these tools on a day-to-day basis in your homeschool. And we'll probably be discussing that as we go throughout the evening. But then we'll come back and kind of recap a little bit as well. And then we'll also have some time for a Q&A at the end. So we're scheduled to go for just over an hour. And typically the demo portion takes about an hour. And then we'll have plenty of time afterwards to answer any questions that you may have. Also, we are recording this training session, and we will be emailing a link to that recording to everyone that has registered for this webinar. So let's dive right in. First, on where to find help. So probably the best place to start are things like this training webinar. And if you go to our website at homeschooltracker.com, you can always click on this support tab here and jump to a number of different places. So the training center here is where you'll find our upcoming training events, the webinars that we have scheduled, along with replays of our webinars. So you can watch this training session again, or you can also check out a training session we did recently on lesson planning in Homeschool Tracker. And you can also see every previous training session from this link down here. Additionally, we also have some great video tutorials. So this is our Getting Started tutorial guide right here. And this is an 11-part video series. And it probably takes only about 30 minutes to watch all 11 parts. And if you haven't done that, I definitely recommend checking that out as well. And it's also broken up into these different parts. So if you want to just jump right into a very specific area within the program, you can certainly do that. Additionally, we have some really robust help documentation, and that all exists right here in this help articles link here. And so our help documentation here is really comprehensive. And as you can see, it's definitely more of a reference guide. So what I often recommend to users is that wherever you are within Homeschool Tracker, there's always going to be this help link up here at the top right. So for example, if I am on the calendar view here in the agenda, if I click on that help link up here, it'll take me directly to the corresponding help page within the documentation. And so this page here tells me anything and everything I've ever wanted to know about the agenda calendar view. And of course, there's links to everything that it mentions here. So this is a great resource. If you're ever stuck or ever have any questions whatsoever, definitely check out that help link. And you can always search within this help guide as well. So, for example, if I just search for days off, um, I can get right to that section on how to create days off within Homeschool Tracker. And additionally, the main page here, this index here, you can certainly search this page or just jump right to the thing that you're looking for. So the help guide is certainly a great resource, and I would definitely be sure to check that out if you're ever looking for more information. And then last but certainly not least, you can always email us at support@homeschooltracker.com. And my wife, Amy, is monitoring that email box all the time, and she'll get back to you definitely within 1 to 2 business days and is more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Okay, great. So that's where we can find help within Homeschool Tracker. Let's spend a little bit of time going over the interface. So I'm going to jump back over here. I'm just going to close these here. I'm going to jump back to Homeschool Tracker. And okay, so this is the main menu within Homeschool Tracker. And it's broken up into a few different areas. So you have schedules and planning, students, reports, manage lists, and your account. So let's start over here with the schedules and planning section of the menu. And this is really where you're going to find the agenda, both in calendar view and list view. This is where you also find all of your lesson plans, as well as the shared lesson plan library. I would say this is probably where you spend most of your time, most of your kind of day-to-day time within Homeschool Tracker will be in this schedules and planning section. I'm going to pause for just 1 second and just make sure I'm set up properly here. Let's see. I apologize. Okay. All right, great. I think I'm all set. I had an audio issue there for a second. Okay, so and then this section here, where it says students, this is where you'll find anything and everything related to students. So your student list will be here, the grade levels, the grading overview, lesson plans and presets, which is something that we'll cover in a little bit, as well as the transcript supplemental. And that's really just a place where you can add additional information to your transcript that will then be appended onto that. The middle section here, reports, this is where all of the reports that you can generate with Homeschool Tracker are located. So, for example, we're going to talk a little bit today about the daily task list. This is where you can also create report cards, transcripts, and other kinds of reports. And then the manage list section of the menu. This is what I like to call, this is more of a maintenance area of Homeschool Tracker. So each one of these lists here, activities, chore names, grading skills, subjects, etc. These are all sections of the program where you can essentially add information that will then be referenced in your agenda. So for example, this is where you'll create subjects, this is where you'll create courses, this is where you'll enter library items, and all of those are really lists of items that by themselves don't really do much, but when they're referenced from an assignment or from a lesson plan item, that's where the real power comes from. So that's why I call it more of a maintenance area, because you probably won't spend a ton of time in there, but it's definitely a place where you start out when you're setting up your Homeschool Tracker account. And then finally, the Your Account section down here. This is where the program options are, where you can modify or edit your school profile and extend your subscription or add additional user accounts. Okay, so that's just a quick interface tour, and we'll definitely be jumping into a lot of those different places over the course of this training session. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the difference between subjects and courses. And this is oftentimes an area where folks get a little bit confused. And so I think it's important to spend a little bit of time to understand how Homeschool Tracker designates between a subject and a course. So subjects are really we call broad areas of study. So things like math, language arts, history, or science, those would all be subjects. And then courses, these are basically classes, right? These are the specific areas of study within a subject. So, for example, Algebra 2 would be the name of a course that would belong to the subject of math. Composition 1 is a course that might belong to the subject of language arts. And Physical Science 1 might be a course that belongs to the subject of science. So as you can see, definitely the names of the courses are much more specific than the subject itself. And so that's important to understand. So let's take a look at what this looks like in Homeschool Tracker. So I'm going to jump over to the Manage List section of the menu and click on Subjects to view my subjects list. And here you can see I have 4 subjects currently. And I should just say for 1 second that generally you might have a Homeschool Tracker account that has maybe 4 to 6 or 8 different subjects, but you might have tens or hundreds of different courses over the course of your homeschool career. So, if you're finding that you're having more than, say, 10 subjects, you might want to kind of rethink how you're categorizing things. So as you can see, I have 4 subjects: history, language arts, math, science. So again, very broad areas of study. And you can see here in this list that there's really not a whole lot to do. So for example, if I open one of these, I don't have a lot of options because a subject is simply just that. It's just really a broad area of study that doesn't really have a lot of specificity to it. So if I wanted to create a new subject, I could just click on Action and choose Add, give my subject a name, choose these few options here and click save, and I would then have a brand new subject. But let's jump over to the courses list here. And as you can see right off the bat, courses have a lot more information associated with them. So, for example, if you look at Ancient History 1 here, Ancient History 1 is the name of the course, which belongs to the subject of history. And then there's a number of other options here. So if I open this up to take a look, you can see that I can, excuse me, assign it credit units. I can determine how those credit units are calculated. I can choose a grading scale, add notes, all sorts of different things. And if I wanted to go ahead and create a new course, I could just simply click on Action, Add, and I could give my course a name. I'm going to call this one Reading 1. And then for subject, this is what we call a smart entry field. And for this specific course, I'm going to say that it belongs to the subject of language arts, right? And so as I started typing, you can see that language arts popped up here, and that's what makes this a smart entry field. So I can go ahead and select language arts, and basically what it was doing while I was typing that, it was searching my subjects list that we were just in previously for anything that had those characters in it, and it found language arts. So, for example, if I started typing math, you would see that math would show up. One trick with smart entry fields is that you could simply hit the space bar, basically enter a blank space into the field, and you'll see a list of everything that shows up. And that's really handy if you don't necessarily remember the subject or remember the item that you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and select language arts, and I'm just going to keep the rest of these as the default because I don't need to get too deep into these details here. But definitely if for example, credit units or grading scales are important to you, check out the help section, and you'll can learn a lot more about all the capabilities within the course screen here. So if I go ahead and click on Save, it says added one new item, click refresh to view. So I'll go ahead and refresh, and you'll see that my course Reading 1, which belongs to the subject of language arts, is now here. Okay, great. So that is how to create a course and the difference between subjects and courses. So, a few things to watch out for. We definitely recommend not using the exact same name for both a subject and a course. And the reason for this is just that it can get confusing. So, for example, I would not necessarily name a course language arts and have it belong to the subject of language arts because you'll be confused in terms of not necessarily knowing if you're selecting the course language arts or the subject language arts. And then also, language arts as a name isn't very specific, right? And so that's why it's best used for a subject. And if you have the name of the course be something more specific, that will definitely just help you down the line, especially if you're creating a report card or a transcript and you want to see the name of that course on that transcript or report card. The other thing that I should mention is that a slash shows the break between subject and course. So I'll show you what this looks like here. I'm just going to jump over to the agenda. And if I was creating a new assignment here under subject course, this is again a smart entry field. If I hit the space bar, you'll see that I have history, history slash ancient history one, language arts slash grammar. And so, as I mentioned, the slash designates the difference between a subject and a course. So, in this case, with history, if I selected that, I would just be selecting the subject history. But if I look at this one, history slash ancient history one, really I'm seeing the subject history and the course ancient history one. So if I select this, I'm selecting the course ancient history one, which is part of the history subject. So that's really why we show this where it says subject slash course, because you'll see this often where you'll see the subject slash course. So it's important to be sure that you're selecting the course that you're looking for in a smart entry field like this. Okay, so that's the difference between subjects and courses. So, um, the next thing we want to talk about are assignments, which, as I mentioned before, are really the heart of all of your record keeping in Homeschool Tracker. And so, assignments are the schoolwork tasks that we give our students to complete. So, these aren't necessarily appointments or chores or soccer practice or anything like that. These are things that generally we might have points associated with them if we're grading, or it's something that we might want to mark complete, to say that this assignment was finished at some point. That's really what we're talking about when we talk about assignments. And assignments can come from a number of different places and they can generate a number of different reports. So, as I mentioned, assignments are right here in the middle. They're the heart of all of your record keeping. And they can come from a few different places. So, they could be created individually or in a series directly in the agenda, or they could come from a lesson plan. And from that lesson plan, you can run the scheduler tool, which will then create assignments. So lesson plans don't have assignments in them inherently. They have essentially what we call lesson plan items. And when they run through the scheduler, that's where they become assignments on your agenda. And from assignments, because assignments have all that data, they have the student name, a date, they have a subject course, they have the description of the assignment, they have an activity, they might have a grade. Because all that information is contained within an assignment, when you generate those and if you mark those complete and grade them, what you can do is you can then generate report cards and transcripts. If you have auto attendance enabled, it can create an attendance record for you. You can create the daily task list, which will show all of the assignments that your student might have to complete in a particular day. And you can generate a number of additional reports, all based off of how much data, how much information you put into that assignment. And it's really up to you. So let's take a look at what the assignment entry screen looks like. And we actually looked at this just a second ago when I was showing the difference between subject and course. But basically, each assignment requires a student, a subject course, and a date. And then there's a number of optional fields. But really, those are the three main fields: student, subject course, and date. And then the rest of these fields are certainly optional, but you'll probably want to use at least a few of them based off of your needs. And then the key is when you mark an assignment complete by a teacher, a number of things can happen. Attendance can be recorded, grades can be generated, time spent is calculated, and from all of that information, all of these different reports can be generated. So we're going to do a little bit of a demo, and we're going to create single and multiple assignments. We'll add grades to them, and we'll mark them complete. And we'll do this both from the calendar view as well as the list view. So let's jump back here to Homeschool Tracker. And from the main menu, I'm going to start in the Agenda Calendar view. Now, to create an assignment, I simply have to go to, actually, I'm just going to go to today real quick. Today is Monday, November 2nd. But if I'm going to go ahead and create a single assignment, I simply just want to go to Add and choose Assignment Single. And then I can choose a student. So I'll choose my daughter, Campbell. And then a subject course. And again, this is a smart entry field, so I could just hit the space bar. And I'm going to choose Ancient History 1 as the course. And then for the dates, let's just make it for today. And I could give it a start time if I wanted to. Um, let's just say that this was from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. An activity. Activities are typically things like lesson or test or quiz. I'm going to say that this was a lesson. And again, this is a smart entry field. So as I was typing, it searched my activity list. And I'm going to go ahead and choose lesson. Resource, this will search my library for any items that I've designated a resource. So if I hit space there, I can choose a book that might go along with this. I'm just going to choose this one here. PLC stands for page, lesson, chapter. Really, that just is a field where you could put in, say, page 42 through 46. And then I can choose to add points possible and points earned. This is if I'm grading this assignment. So let's say that this particular lesson was worth 10 points, and time spent was automatically calculated based off of the time that I put in here. If I don't put in a time here and I save this, it would just show up as an all day assignment, which means that my student could accomplish this assignment whenever he or she wishes. But I like to use the times, but some folks don't. It's just up to you if you like to do that or not. So that's all I really want to include for this assignment. So if I click on save, you'll see that Campbell Ancient History 1 assignment is now here on her agenda at 10 a.m. for Monday, 11/2. And so if I click on that, I can get a little preview of that assignment. It's got the PLC information here, the resource that goes along with that. And if I click on more, I can get back to the screen if I want to make any edits or anything like that. So let's say that Monday has come and gone and Campbell did that assignment. So I want to go in and mark that complete and give it a grade as her teacher. So I can go ahead and click on it. And I can do that from this screen here. So if I go ahead and give it a grade, let's say she got 9 out of 10, and then I go ahead and mark this teacher complete, you'll notice that I calculated the grade of 90%. If I go ahead and click save, you'll see that this kind of grayed out a little bit, which shows that it was marked complete. And then also it generated this Campbell present up here, which is an attendance record because I have auto attendance enabled, which basically just says that if a assignment is marked complete on a day, on a specific day, that assumes that that student was in school that day. And so it automatically created an attendance record for her. Additionally, you could mark things complete directly from this preview screen here by simply clicking on the teacher check mark there. If I click on that, it'll actually unmark it complete, but I can go ahead and mark it again, enter the grade, and click continue. And so now that assignment is completely finished and marked complete. And when we think about workflows, there are definitely a lot of homeschool tracker users that do this single assignment thing on a regular basis where you might plan your day for tomorrow and create single assignments, and then at the end of the day go ahead and mark them complete and give them grades. Absolutely perfectly fine workflow, and a lot of folks do just that. Additionally, you could do that in reverse. So if you perhaps aren't necessarily a big planner, or you just don't necessarily know what you might have going on the next day or this day, for example, you could essentially go in that night and add in single assignments for all the things that you did do on that day. And then Homeschool Tracker really becomes more of a log, a place where you can input all that information after the fact and essentially store all that data. So it really just depends on how you want to use these tools. And that's why, we think that workflows are so important, because for everybody in everybody's homeschool, they're going to have different priorities. They're going to have different ways that they want to teach or learn. And you can definitely use Homeschool Tracker in a number of different ways. So the other thing I want to show you is how to add multiple assignments all at once. So if I go and click on add and choose assignment multiple, I'm presented with what is essentially a wizard for creating multiple assignments all at once. So up here at the top, you have these three different tabs: students and details, day and date, page, lesson, chapter. And if I start over here with students and details, I can choose which students I want these assignments to apply to. The nice thing is I can have it create assignments for multiple students at once. In this case, I'll just choose Campbell. And then I can select a subject course. So again, I'll hit the space bar because this is a smart entry field, and I'll select Ancient History 1. And then for activity, I'm going to say that these are lessons, and I can choose a resource again. So I'll just pick this one. Let's say I want these all to happen from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., and they're all going to be worth 10 points. So if I click continue to day and date, that'll essentially take me to this next tab here. I can do that, and I can choose when I want to schedule these assignments. So I want them to happen every day, and I can choose a start date. I'm going to choose tomorrow, the 3rd. And then I have options here to continue creating items until PLC pattern is exhausted, or I can continue creating items until an end date. I'm going to choose this top item here, continue creating items until PLC pattern is exhausted. And I'll explain what that means here in just a second. So if I continue to PLC, and you'll remember that PLC stands for page, lesson, chapter, I can essentially have the same PLC for each assignment I'm going to create right now, or I can use the auto increment tools to have the PLC change from one assignment to the next, which is actually probably a more realistic scenario. So you might imagine creating 5 assignments, and assignment one is for lesson one, assignment two is for lesson two, lesson three, and so on. It would certainly take a decent amount of time if to create those assignments individually and to type in lesson one, lesson two, lesson three for each different one. Well, with these tools here, these auto increment tools, I can have Homeschool Tracker do that for me. So if I choose one part auto increment, I can say I want the leading text to be lesson, and I'm going to start with number one, and I'll end with number four. I'm going to increment by one. And if I click on this little sample button here, you'll see a little preview. So it's going to go lesson one, lesson two, lesson three, lesson four. And if you remember, I chose this option to continue creating items until PLC pattern is exhausted. Well, my pattern here is lesson one through four, increment by one. So the pattern will be exhausted after 4 items, essentially. Additionally, you can do 2-part auto increments or 3-part auto increments where you could say, I wanted to say lesson one, question A or something. And then it would go lesson one, question B, lesson one, question C, etc. And so there's a lot of flexibility here in terms of how you want Homeschool Tracker to automatically create these different PLC increments. But I'm going to go ahead and click continue to preview and get a preview of what I'm about to create. So you'll see that I'm creating assignments for Campbell. And it's going to start on Tuesday the 3rd and go through Friday the 6th. And the PLC goes lesson one, two, three, four. So again, this is just a preview. If I wanted to change any of this, I could just click on one of these tabs to go back and make any adjustments necessary. But this is what I was looking for. So I'll go ahead and select all of these and then choose accept selected items. And there you go. Now you can see I have these 4 other assignments here. This one should say lesson one, and this one lesson two, lesson three, and lesson four. So you can see how I quickly created 4 assignments just going through that simple wizard. And again, talking about workflow, a lot of users do this on a regular basis. So for example, you could jump in here on a Sunday night and create multiple assignments for your entire week ahead, and then go ahead and homeschool that week. And at the end of the week or at the end of each day, you could go in and mark all of those assignments complete and give them grades and repeat that process each week. And that's a perfectly fine workflow, and a lot of folks do that. So again, it's just another way to think about how you might use these tools on a day-to-day basis. And so that's really how you would do this right here in the calendar view. A few other things about the calendar view. Up here at the top, these blue tabs here are essentially filters that determine what we're looking at in the calendar view. So for example, I have student, and currently I have all selected students, but I could change that to just show specific students. Types, right now I'm viewing everything, but if I only wanted to see assignments and appointments, for example, I could just have those selected. Completion status, right now I'm looking at everything, but if I only wanted to see incomplete items, I could uncheck all of these. So lots of really powerful filtering tools. And again, subject course, I could choose all subject courses or specify just the ones that I would want to view. And then over here, you have options to view this on a weekly basis. You could view the whole month at a time or just one day at a time. So definitely a lot of different options here on how to view items in the agenda calendar view. If you're ever wondering why something isn't showing up in the calendar view, oftentimes it might be that you have one of these filters turned on. So be sure to just check those to make sure they're set to what you would expect to view. So that's really the calendar view. And the other view I want to show you is what's called the agenda list view. And so while the calendar view is a great way to see things kind of broadly and maybe edit one of these at a time, the list view presents things in a list. And so you can see here I have all of my assignments, I have that attendance record, and they're all kind of organized here in more of a grid format. And the nice thing about that is I can quickly see, how these might be incrementing. I can see the grades that I have here, and I can view more than one item at a time, essentially. The other thing I can do is I can edit more than one item at a time. So if I wanted to take these 4 assignments here, and let's say I wanted to change the time on them, so they're all set for 10 to 11 a.m. right now. If I wanted to move that to 9 to 10 a.m., I could just select all of them and then choose Action, Multi-Edit, and I can edit all of the fields or whichever fields I would like to. So I'll just choose time, and I'm going to change that to 9 to 10 and hit save. And so now you'll see that these all change from 9 to 10. So that's definitely a quick way to do that for more than one item at a time. Additionally, you could delete more than one item at a time. You could copy, etc. One nice thing about the agenda list view as well is I could select all of these items and choose Action, Mark as Complete. So if I go ahead and mark those complete, you'll notice that it created attendance records for each one of those items, and it marked all of them teacher complete over here as well. So a quick way to affect more than one item at a time. And again, with the agenda list view, you also have a bunch of powerful sorting, grouping, and filtering options. So the left hand column here, these are all those filters similar to the ones that you saw in the calendar view. So you have the date range that you can choose, students, types, completion status, subject course. These are all filters, just like we saw in the calendar view. Additionally, you can sort by column. So I could sort by date ascending or date descending. You can also sort by more than one column at a time. So if I sorted by descending date and also by I could do sort by description as well, alphabetically if I wanted. Lots of different options here. So you can also group by column. So for example, you'll see that I have different types here. So if I took this column and dragged it up here, now I'm essentially grouping by type. So all my assignments are together and all of my attendance records are together. So that's a really handy feature as well. And again, you can apply sorts to your groupings as well. So I can group by type, but then I could sort by date descending if I wanted to. Additionally, these are collapsible. So one common thing to do, for example, if you have multiple students, is to group by student. And then you could have each of your students here kind of collapsed and then quickly open them up to see what that student has in their agenda. To clear a grouping, you can just click on this X here, and it'll go back to the way that it was. Additionally, there's a search field here, so I could search for anything that I was looking for. For example, I could just search for lesson, and then just my lessons would show up. To clear that search, I can just click on this green search item here, and that goes away. So a lot of different options here in the agenda list view, really powerful grouping and sorting tools that will certainly come in handy as your agenda grows. Okay, so we talked about assignments. We showed you how to create single and multiple assignments, how to add grades, mark those complete, and we did that from both the calendar view and the list view. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about lesson plans. And lesson plans are a really popular feature within Homeschool Tracker. And essentially what they are a sequence of items that have not yet been scheduled as assignments. So as you remember, assignments had a requirement of having a date, a student, and a subject course. Well, lesson plan items basically have all the same things as an assignment, except they don't have a date and they don't have a student. So essentially, they're just a list of items that your student eventually will study in a particular sequence. But you're not tied to a date yet and you don't necessarily have to assign them to a specific student just yet. And so this is really perfect if you want to plan out everything in advance or if you're using a predefined curriculum. So if you purchased a curriculum off the shelf, for example, it might already have a lesson plan that came with it that you could simply copy or import into Homeschool Tracker and then assign those items to your student as your school year went on. And so, I mentioned that these lesson plans aren't necessarily tied to a particular student. So the nice thing about that is that you can use these over and over again throughout your homeschooling career. So, for example, if you have one student that's doing freshman biology right now, you could create a lesson plan for that biology course, have your student go through it. And then when your younger students take that course, you can simply just reuse that same lesson plan and just assign those same items, but now to the other student. And so that's really handy, especially if you have multiple students, or if you are part of a group or a co-op, for example. You might have shared curriculum or shared lesson plans. That's another really handy feature. And speaking of sharing, these lesson plans can be shared or imported using our shared lesson plan library, which has hundreds of lesson plans that have been submitted by users. And a lot of them are based off the shelf curriculum. So there's definitely some value to checking that out if you do use some off the shelf curriculum in your homeschool. So it probably makes sense to demo lesson plans because until you see what they are and how they work, it can be a little hard to fully understand. So we're going to see an example lesson plan, and then we'll create a simple lesson plan. We'll import one from the shared lesson plan library, and then I'll show you how to schedule that lesson plan, and we'll discuss how you can use presets to do that as well. So let's jump over here, and we'll go back to our menu, and this time we'll choose lesson plan. The first time you come to the screen, you'll see this little message, which basically just explains the same thing that we just talked about a second ago. And I'm just going to close this for a second. The first thing you might notice from the lesson plan screen is that it looks a lot like the agenda list view. You have an area here that will have all of your lesson plan items. The purple column over here is the filters, and you can also group and sort these columns just like you could in the agenda list view. So to load up a lesson plan, and if you're just starting out, you won't have any lesson plans currently in your account, but I have a few. So if I go ahead and just click on this lesson plan link here, it says choose a lesson plan name. So I can just hit the space bar here. This is a smart entry field. And I can load up any one of these lesson plans that I have already. So I'm going to open this Abeka arithmetic one. And this is really just to show you what a lesson plan typically looks like or could look like. And the first thing you'll notice is that uh, instead of having a date, we have a day number. And all that means is that on day one of this lesson plan, this is what your student will do. On day two, this is what they'll do. Day three, this is what they'll do, and so on and so forth. And so you can see the PLC here increments lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through lesson 11. And then on day 12, it looks like we have an oral test that's worth 100 points. And also on day 12, it looks like there's another test, and that's also worth 100 points. And then we get back to the lessons, and this goes for a few more days, and again, another oral test, and then another test. And then we continue on again. And this goes on for a while. So if I scroll all the way down, you'll see that it goes for 171 days. And this is 202 total items. So this is an entire school year's worth of lessons and tests in a particular sequence. So essentially creating a lesson plan. So that's what a lesson plan looks like. And so if I actually opened one of these, you would see that this entry form looks a lot like the assignment entry form, except that it's missing a few things. It's missing the date that we talked about. It's missing a student. But everything else looks a lot like an assignment, but it's not quite an assignment yet because it hasn't been scheduled. So that's really what a lesson plan looks like. So let's go ahead and create one so that we can see how this works. And so from the lesson plan screen, I can just simply go to add. I'm going to choose add multiple. And since I was on the lessons plan screen, it's preloading the lesson plan that I was just looking at if I wanted to add multiple items to that lesson plan. In this case, I want to create a new one. So I'm just going to delete that. And I'm going to call this sample plan. And it should belong to a subject course. So I'm going to choose ancient history. or I should say the items I'm about to create will need a subject course. So I'm going to choose ancient history. And these will be lessons, just like before. And they'll have a resource. Let's just, pick this one. And that's all I need right now. And so now I'll continue to day numbers. And so when I say day numbers, that's really basically determining how many I'm going to create essentially. So I'm going to start on day 1 and I'll increment by 1. And so if I go to PLC, now again, this is just like when we were creating multiple assignments in the agenda. I'm creating multiple lesson plan items. So I can choose a 1-part auto increment, and I'm going to call this lesson 1, and I'm going to end with lesson 10, and I'll increment by 1. And I can see a sample of what that's going to look like. And I'll go ahead and continue to preview. And so now you'll see I'm about to create 10 lesson plan items, and they're going to start with lesson 1 and go all the way through lesson 10. And that's it. So I'll go ahead and select all of these and choose accept selected items. Okay, great. So then it takes me back to the lesson plan screen. So I just need to load up this sample plan. So I'll select the sample plan and open that up. And so here you can see I have day 1 through 10, and it goes lesson 1 through lesson 10. Now, let's say I wanted to add a test at the end of day 10. I'm going to add it on day 11. So I'll just choose add single. Again, the same subject course. Oops. This will be a test. Let's say it's worth 100 points. And I'll go ahead and hit save. And you'll notice that it jumped up here to the top because I forgot to put a day number in. So it's actually set for day 0. So I actually want that to be day 11. I'll just double click on that and make that day 11. So there you go. Now I have a very simple lesson plan. It's day 1 through 10. And then on day 11, I have a test that's worth 100 points. And so you can see I can keep continuing this pattern if I like to create a lesson plan for my entire school year, for my entire course, however long it might go. But there's also a lot of probably more efficient ways to do this as well. And we cover a lot of those in our lesson planning webinar or our lesson planning training session. So definitely if lesson planning is of interest to you, I highly recommend checking that out. Again, if you go to um, homeschooltracker.com/training webinars, which you can find just from the support tab up here, just go to the training center. You can see the replay for our lesson planning webinar that we did a few weeks ago. And we go into a lot of really more advanced strategies of how to create lesson plans in a really fast and efficient way. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Okay, so we created a very simple lesson plan here. And this is something that we could certainly use in our homeschool. So the next thing I want to show you is how to import a lesson plan from the shared lesson plan library. So if I go back to Homeschool Tracker and go to the menu and go to Shared Lesson Plans, you'll be presented with the Shared Lesson Plan library. And if I just put in a blank search into the search here and hit go, it'll load up all of the shared lesson plans in the library. And so as you can see, there are literally hundreds of lesson plans in here that have been created by users just like you. And so a lot of these are based off the shelf curriculum. So if you're, for example, using Growing with Grammar, this is definitely worth checking out. You could load that up and see if this lesson plan might work for you. But definitely check out the shared lesson plan library before creating your own lesson plan, because there might be something in there that might work for you. And of course, if you do create your own lesson plan, think about sharing it as well, because that could certainly be helpful to another user. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and search in here. I'm going to search for reading, and I like, let's see, this Usborne First Reading Level 1 lesson plan. I'm going to take a look at that. So as you can see, this lesson plan is 15 days. And it has resources associated with it. It has PLC. Um, someone definitely took the time to create this. So I'm going to go ahead and import this into my account. I'll choose Prepare for Import. And this will get it ready for me to load into my account. And I can get a preview of it here. And I need to give it a name. So I'm going to call this Reading 1. And if I take a look at it, I noticed something right off the bat that the subject course is just language arts. And I actually want this to be in my reading one course. So I could certainly import this and edit that later, but I can also do it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and select all these items and choose action, multi edit. Click on subject course. I'm just going to change this to language arts reading one and I'll hit save. And so there we go. So now um, when this is imported, all these items will be associated with my reading one course. And if I keep looking at it, if I look at these resources, you'll know that there's an asterisk. You'll notice there's an asterisk here and it says new. That just means that I don't have that resource in my library. And so what's going to happen when I import this lesson plan, it's going to create those resources for me in my library, which is nice. So this looks good. Let's just make sure these are all selected and I'll choose accept selected items. And this will go ahead and import the lesson plan into my account. And so here we go. This is it right here. I'm back on the lesson plan screen, and this is that lesson plan. And now it's here in my account. So that's a really quick way, as you can see, to import shared lesson plans right into your account, which can certainly be helpful. I'll show you real quick how to share lesson plans that you've created into the shared lesson plan library. Let me just go back to that sample plan. Let's say I wanted to go ahead and submit this to the shared lesson plan library. I could just select all and then choose action share. And I could give it a name and a description. I definitely recommend giving it a very descriptive name and again, a very descriptive description because the more information you put in there, definitely the more helpful it would be to another user that's looking at that plan. And then I would just click submit to shared plans, and it would go ahead and be part of the shared lesson plan library. So it's really easy to share lesson plans, and that's again, it's something that's really helpful. Not only if you're using predefined curriculum like that, but if you are part of a group or a co-op, and you're all working off of similar curriculum, that could certainly be helpful for you. Okay, so that's how we import a lesson plan. I want to show you now how to schedule a lesson plan because, as you remember, lesson plan items are just items until they're scheduled and become assignments on your student's agenda. So I'm going to go back to that reading one plan. And the quickest and easiest way to schedule these items is essentially to just select the ones that you want. So let's say I want to schedule the first 5 items. You could select those and then choose action and choose scheduler. And I can choose one or two student or one or more students. I'm going to choose Campbell and continue to day and date. And then I can choose if I want these to happen every day or, on a weekly basis or monthly, however I want to do it. I'm going to choose every day and I'm going to have it happen at a specific time every day. Let's say 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And I'll have it start today and continue until all selected items in the plan are used. So I'll hit continue to preview and here they are. So now this is when lesson plan items go from being an item on the lesson plan to being an assignment in an agenda. Because as you can see, I'm starting to add things. I'm adding a student and I'm adding a date. And this is what I'm looking for. So basically, I'm taking the first 5 items and I'm scheduling it for this week, Monday through Friday. So I'll hit select all and just choose accept selected items. And now if I go to my agenda and scroll down, you'll see that Campbell now has 5 assignments Monday through Friday, and they're all from that lesson plan. So this was the first item, this is the second item, and so on. And so that's really the quickest and easiest way to schedule lesson plan items to an agenda. And again, because it's a lesson plan, I could go back to that lesson plan and I could do the same thing and schedule them for my other student. I could run the scheduler for Manning if I wanted to. And essentially, he would get those same assignments on his agenda as well. So that's a really simple way to take lesson plan items and then send them to a student's agenda. I'm going to show you a little bit more of an advanced way of doing that. So if I jump down to lesson plans and presets down here, This page here will show me all of the lesson plans that are currently active for Campbell. So I have a number of lesson plans that she's already using. If I want to go ahead and add that reading lesson plan, I can just click on edit and it'll load up all of the available lesson plans. I'm going to go ahead and select reading one. And next I'm going to go to preset here. And what presets are basically preset times throughout the week when specific courses are meant to be scheduled. So this is obviously looks like a calendar, and you'll notice that Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I have a preset set up for Campbell for Ancient History 1. Then from 10 to 11, she's doing spelling. And then from 11 to 12 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, she does arithmetic. And Tuesday, Thursday, she does grammar, and etc. So this basically creates these blocks of time that when the scheduler runs, if you select the preset option, it'll basically match up the courses from your lesson plans with the courses that you have presets for. So this will all make sense here once I start running the scheduler, but I'm going to go ahead and add a preset and I'm going to have it be for reading one. Let's just have it every day from 3 to 4 p.m. And I'll click on save. And you'll see I just added this preset, Language Arts Reading 1 from 3 to 4 p.m. So now whenever I run the scheduler for something that has Reading 1 as the course, if I had selected the preset option, it's going to go ahead and drop it right into this time slot for me. So let's jump over to the scheduler now, and you'll start to see how this all works together. So if I go to the scheduler, it's going to bring up all of those lesson plans that are currently active for Campbell. So I'll just go ahead and have these all selected, and you'll notice here's that reading one plan. If I go ahead and click continue to day and date, I can essentially schedule these the same way I had been, or I can choose this option right here that says preset. And I can choose a start date. So I'm going to do this for next week, starting on the 9th. And I'm going to do it just for next week. So I'll have it start on the 9th and go through the 13th. So I'm just going to schedule 1 week at a time. And because I have that preset option, it's going to go through all of those lesson plans, find the courses for them, and then match them up with the presets that I had designated for Campbell. So if I click on continue to preview, you'll see that it's going to go ahead and create 49 items for me all of a sudden. So you'll see Ancient History 1 is set for Monday from 9 to 10. All About Spelling has 2 items from 10 to 11 on Monday. Let's go ahead and see if I can find my Reading 1 item. Yeah, so here's Reading 1 from Monday at 3 to 4, and so on. So it's basically scheduling her entire week for me with just a few clicks. So if I go ahead and hit select all and choose accept selected items, I'm going to go ahead and basically create all 49 of those items on Campbell's agenda right now. And this is for, probably half a dozen different courses all at once. So it's going and it's creating those 49 items for her. And now if I jump to the calendar view, you'll see what that looks like. Just finish waiting for this to load. If I go here, and remember this was this week, if I jump to next week, you'll see that now Campbell has a full agenda already for next week. So it scheduled her Ancient History 1, it scheduled spelling, arithmetic and grammar, physical science, math, and reading all at once for me. So, you can see that each one of these is different because it's from the lesson plan. And because we had created a preset for preset times, and we ran the scheduler and selected the preset option, it basically matched up all those courses in the lesson plan, and it dropped them in the corresponding preset. So when you think about workflows, this is probably the most efficient workflow, where essentially I created lesson plans for each one of my courses, and then I created presets for each one of those courses. And when I run the scheduler and select that preset option, it with a few clicks and just a few minutes, I can schedule her entire week all at once. And so a lot of folks do this, and this is probably, the most recommended or most common workflow where perhaps maybe on a Sunday night you go into Homeschool Tracker, you load up all your presets and your lesson plans, and you schedule that week ahead. And then at the end of the week or at the end of every night, you can go in and mark all these items complete and give them grades if necessary. And then, just do that again the following week. Now, it can certainly be tempting with lesson plans to go ahead and schedule your entire year at once. And I definitely recommend that you don't do that, mainly because when you're scheduling hundreds of items all at once, that also means that if anything ever changed or if you wanted to reschedule anything, you would essentially have to be moving hundreds, if not thousands, of items rather than just scheduling a week or even 2 weeks at a time. Just gives you more flexibility. So, if I scheduled this 1 week here for Campbell and we started falling behind, it'd be really easy for me to just make some adjustments here so that we can get back ahead, or I can edit this agenda throughout the week if I like, and it just gives me more flexibility. If I had scheduled her entire year at once and we started to run behind or fall behind, or got ahead, for example, it would just be a little bit more tricky for me to essentially move all of those thousands of assignments all at once. So I definitely recommend, if you're scheduling using lesson plans, or even if you're just creating assignments manually, only do a week or two at a time, and it definitely will keep things a little bit more efficient for you, and probably reduce the number of headaches as well. Okay, so if I go back to lesson plans and presets, I just want to show you one more thing. When you are using lesson plans in the scheduler, Homeschool Tracker is keeping track of which items are being used and which have not yet been used. So, for example, reading one, there's 15 total items in that lesson plan. And there's only 5 left because, as you remember, I scheduled 1 week already, and then I scheduled another week after that. So that's essentially 10 items. So that's why there's only 5 left. And so you can quickly get a kind of a quick glimpse of where you're at in terms of your progress within a given lesson plan. So that's handy too, if you're only scheduling a week or two at a time. And if you were worried that by doing that, you wouldn't necessarily know where you were in your lesson plan, you can always just look at this and see, oh, I'm almost halfway through, or more than halfway through my spelling lesson plan. I'm at 90 out of 170. So that's a quick glimpse into how that works. I'll also show you how that looks within the lesson plan itself. So this is that reading one lesson plan. The way that Homeschool Tracker is keeping track of which items have been used and which have not been used is by using what we call the used status column. And so if I go to displaying here on the lesson plan and choose used by student, and I can choose Campbell, and I'll show both statuses. Basically adds a couple columns here: used, yes or no, and then the used date. So you'll notice these first 10 items here are all marked as used, and it shows what date they've been used, and these items here have not been used yet. So the next time I run the scheduler, Homeschool Tracker is going to pick up with this one because it's the next item in the lesson plan that has not been used. And so that's how it's keeping track of where you left off within your lesson plan. If, for example, you ever needed to change this use status, you can certainly do that. So, for example, let's say you scheduled some items and then you perhaps deleted the assignments from your agenda, and then you needed to essentially schedule them again from the lesson plan. You would probably need to change the used status so that Homeschool Tracker did not, or the scheduler did not pick up with this one, for example, but let's say you wanted it to start back from the top. So you can always change the used status here. You can select which items you want. I'll just select all of them. And I can choose action, set used status. And I could just say, for Campbell, make them all not used. And I'll click save. And so now none of them are used. So if I run the scheduler again, it'll start back here at the top. So that's just a quick way to show you how you can change that used status if necessary. Okay, so we covered a lot about lesson plans. We showed you an example plan. We created a simple lesson plan. We imported one from the shared lesson plan library, and then we started scheduling those lesson plans, both in the what I call a simple way, and then a more advanced way where we used presets in the scheduler tool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about reports. So there are a number of different reports you can create within Homeschool Tracker. They're all created as PDFs, and you can save those, print them, or email them. And we're going to talk a little bit about the daily task list, which is a report that a lot of folks use on a day-to-day basis. We won't necessarily talk too much about transcripts or report cards just yet, but we'll certainly do a more specific training session on transcripts and report cards as we get closer to halfway in the school year, and then certainly again near the end of the school year in April and May. So let's look at the daily task list real quick. If I go back to the homeschool tracker and go on the reports section here to daily task list, I can essentially create a list of all the tasks for my student. Um, and I have a number of different options I can choose. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for Campbell. And I'll have it be for, let's see, that week that we just scheduled with all of those assignments. So that's the week of the 16th. So I'll choose start on that Monday and end on Friday. And I have a number of different options I can choose here. I'm just going to choose these that I have selected, and I'll click Generate Report. Oops, I must have chose something wrong here. And let's just choose this week. Oh yeah, sorry. It was the week of the 9th. So I'll click Generate Report, and then I'll click Pick Up Report. And what that does is it basically downloads a PDF file to my hard drive. And let me zoom in here. So this is the daily task list for Campbell from 11:09 to 11:13. And essentially you can see that on Monday, she has these ancient history 1 assignments and, all these other tasks. And then on Tuesday, she has some more to do and so on and so forth. And this is nice because you can print this out and put it on a clipboard or on a bulletin board if you like. There's these little check boxes here just for your own use if you wanted to use those. But the daily task list certainly is a great way, especially if you still like printing things for your students or for yourself. You can print this out, and it's a really handy way to have an offline version of what you and your student need to accomplish over a given day or a week, for example. So that's the daily task list. Let's go back here. And like I mentioned with transcripts and report cards, these can be generated as long as you have at least one completed and graded assignment in a course. So if you think about, what we were describing before with assignments being the heart of all your record keeping, you're going to need at least one assignment that is graded and marked complete to generate a transcript or report card because um, transcripts and report cards can only be created if that particular course has a grade, and you will need at least one grade to have a grade within that course. So that's why you definitely need to have at least one assignment that's completed and graded in order to create a transcript or a report card. Okay, so just to recap on workflows a little bit, like we talked about before, you can certainly create single assignments on a daily basis. So, every morning create an assignment or a number of assignments for your student, and then at the end of the day, go ahead and mark those complete or give them grades. Or you could do the reverse, and this is great for unschoolers or folks that just don't have um, necessarily the time or want to create those assignments ahead of time. You could just go through your schooling day, and then at the end of the day go back and think about all the things that you did, and certainly log those assignments at that point because you'll still have all the same data to generate report cards and transcripts and attendance records and everything. You just essentially logged it instead of used Homeschool Tracker to plan for it. And then the more advanced workflow that we discussed, where essentially you can create lesson plans for all of your courses or some of them, and then schedule them for your students 1 week or 2 weeks at a time. This is a great workflow, and as you saw, you might just need to do a few clicks and spend a few minutes um, a week essentially to create your entire agenda for that particular week. So those are just two workflows that we like to recommend and we see a lot of users taking advantage of. Okay, so we do have some time for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to submit those using the Q&A button in your viewer. If you just click on that Q&A button, you can go ahead and type in your question, and we'll be able to answer them live here tonight. There was a question that came in ahead of time. And I'm just going to wait to see if any more questions come in. But there's always a number of questions that come in ahead of time. One of them had to do with rescheduling. So let me go ahead and talk a little bit about rescheduling, which certainly could come up. So, for example, let's say, I'm going to jump to my calendar view here. Let's say, things happen and let's say Campbell's sick or people come, family comes into town, whatever it might be. I might just need to reschedule items. The quickest and easiest way to reschedule something is from the calendar view. You could just grab an assignment and simply just click and drag it, right? You can even change the duration of it if you like. You can move it from one day to another. That's really basic rescheduling. Now, obviously, it would be pretty hard to do that with these 49 assignments, clicking and dragging them all around. So to do that, you're going to want to jump to the list view. And let me go ahead and set my date range here to next week. And so these are those same 49 assignments. So let's say, for example, Campbell was sick on that Monday. And so basically, Monday was a wash, and we want to basically take everything and move it forward one day. I could simply select all of these items and choose Action, Reschedule, and I can just change the start date. So right now the start date is Monday, but she was sick on Monday, so we're gonna move everything to the 10th. And I'll go to continue to preview. And so we get a preview here, and we can see the existing date and the new date. So here's the existing date of Monday, and the new date is Tuesday. And existing date of Tuesday, the new date is Wednesday, and this continues on. And so if I go ahead and select all and choose accept selected items, it's going to take all 49 of those items and just push them forward one day. And so that's probably the easiest to view from the calendar here. You'll see now Monday is wide open and everything got pushed forward a day. And if I jump to the next week, you'll see that it even got pushed forward to the next Monday. So that's pretty basic rescheduling. The other rescheduling situation that happens a lot is, let's say, Campbell was sick again on Tuesday, but rather than push everything forward a day again, we don't want to fall too far behind. So let's say we want to basically double up her work on Wednesday so that we can stay on track. If I go back to the list view and select just the items from that Tuesday, let's see here. That is the 10th. I can choose action, reschedule, and basically change those from Tuesday to Wednesday. And so now you'll see the existing date is Tuesday and the new date is Wednesday. Then down here in green, these say they're existing items. They're basically here just to show that there's already items on Wednesday. And so you might have some overlapping conflicts, which we know is certainly possible. So we'll hit select all and choose accept selected items. And so now if we go back to the calendar view, you'll see that her Wednesday is really busy because essentially we're doubling her up on Wednesday, but we're not falling another day behind. We'll still be all caught up by next Monday. So that's rescheduling in a nutshell. Those are probably the most common situations where you would either want to move everything forward a day or however many days, or you would want to move one day forward to essentially double up in case you missed a day. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions coming in. There was a question that was submitted earlier about weighted grading. And this particular user essentially wanted to set up a single course for their language arts studies for, I think it was language arts, freshman language arts, but they wanted to have different weights for things like vocabulary, grammar, reading, that sort of thing. And so rather than create separate courses for each one of those, grammar, reading, vocabulary, they wanted to weight them differently within one course. So I'll show you how to do that. So if I go to grading scales, sorry, not grading scales. If I go to courses, that's right. And let's just use our reading one. Well, let's create a new one just so that it's easier. Go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to call this language arts 9 because I believe it was ninth grade. And this will be in language arts. And if we want to use weighted grading, we're just going to go ahead and click on weighted grading right here. And so the way weighted grading works is it basically takes the activities within an assignment and allows you to weight those activities differently. And if you remember, activities could be things like lessons or tests or quizzes or whatever. They can also be anything you want, right? So this user in particular wanted to create activities for grammar, vocabulary, and reading. So let's go ahead and create new ones. And, we might have some of these activities created already. So actually, yeah, we do. We have reading already. And let's create a new one and see if we might have grammar. No, it doesn't look like it. So we might need to create that first. So let me just cancel this real quick. I'm going to jump to my activities list. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. So I just want to make sure I do it right. So I'm going to create the activities first so that we do this properly. So I'll go ahead and do action, add, and we're going to create one for grammar. And we're going to create one for vocab. And it looked like we already had one for reading, right? Yeah. Let me just double check here. Make sure we don't have more than one. Okay. So now if I go back to the courses, and I'm going to go ahead and create that course again. Language, arts 9 for language arts. And I'm going to choose use weighted grading. And I'll add a new record here. And let's start with, let's just do vocab. And then we'll add a new record, and grammar is one. And then I think reading, right? Yeah. Reading. Okay, so now I have to set weights for each one of these. And now the weights have to equal 100, right? Because if I was going to essentially have all of these different categories, in this case, activities, all be weighted, they need to all add up to 100. So I'm just going to add one more. I'm going to add test. So let's say tests, regardless, are going to be worth 40 or 50%. No, let's just do 40. And then, reading would be worth 20, 20, 20, right? So that's 100%. So now these are all weighted differently. Tests are going to be weighted as 40% of the grade, reading 20%, grammar 20%, vocab 20%. And click save. And so now I have my language arts 9 course, and it's using weighted grading. So now when I go ahead and create assignments for that or lesson plans or whatever, I'll just want to be cognizant of my weights that I'm using. So for example, let's just go ahead and create something, for example. So if I go to add assignment single for Campbell, and this was language arts 9. So for the activity, let's say I want to make sure I do this right, or plan accordingly. So for grammar, and it actually shows the weight there, 20%. If I give this a grade of some kind, actually, I'm not going to give it yet, and click save. So now she has an assignment here, and this will be associated grammar. So as I'm going throughout my course, I want to make sure I have assignments that are created for each one of these activities, and likely that's the case, and that's why you did it that way. So any grade that I give grammar will be weighted as 20% of the overall grade. Same for vocab and reading, and then any test, it will be weighted as 40% of the overall grade. And so Homeschool Tracker will do all that math for you, basically, and we'll roll up all those averages and all those weights accordingly to get your final grade at the end. And a lot of times, you might generate a report card or a transcript, and the grade might look a lot lower than you were expecting. If that's the case, then that probably means that you don't have an assignment with one of the weights represented. So let's say I had 3 assignments, one for grammar, one for vocab, one for reading, but I didn't have any tests. And then I went in and I tried to generate a report card. Well, that report card grade is going to be a lot lower because I only have 60% of the overall weight available to the grade. And Homeschool Tracker will still do that math, but probably the maximum, well, definitely the maximum grade you could get then would be a 60%. And that's given, that I got 100% on everything from those other activities. But if I'm totally missing, 40% of the weight, then it's going to bring my grade way down. So if you see anything like that and it looks like, doesn't look right to you, then that's likely means that you might be missing one of the activities that's going into the weight for your overall grade. So hopefully that makes sense. That's weighted grading kind of in a nutshell. You'll want to think about how you want to plan out your course and all the weights accordingly before kind of diving into it, because you're essentially setting up your grading system for that course. And so you just want to make sure you're making the right choices. And, if you have any questions about that, certainly feel free to email us at support@homeschooltracker.com. We can help work you through, help work that out with you. Just if you need to bounce some ideas around, we've seen a lot of different setups for different users. And so, any challenge you might have, we're more than willing to help you kind of come up with the best solution that will work best for you. Okay. So let's see, any other questions coming in? Doesn't look like it. Um, and we are all set. So, again, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We will be sending out the replay of this session as soon as it's available. So definitely be looking for an email from us for that. And we'll also send you a survey just asking you, what you thought of the training session. If you have any additional questions, if you have any ideas on additional sessions that we might be able to do in the future that would be helpful to you. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Have a good night. Thanks.